Carl and Liam here from Games, Brains and Head-Banging Life, gbhblofficial.com for short, and it's video game track by track. We're taking a look at one of the iconic games with some of the most iconic gaming music in it. It is Sonic the Hedgehog, the original from 1991, the first of the Sonic series that we'll be covering in this track by track. Of course, this is a game I feel needs no introduction. It is Sega's flagship franchise, one of the best-selling video game franchises in the entire world, harking back to 1991 when it was first released on the Genesis or Mega Drive if you're in our country, with, as I already said, song music that is so memorable that if you don't even play games, have never played Sonic, you'd likely remember at least one of these tracks. If you don't know, the original Sonic the Hedgehog, Sega commissioned Masato Nakamura, who was the bass player and songwriter of the J-pop band Dreams Come True, to compose this soundtrack. And I think he did a wonderful job, even though I will say, when I think of great Sonic the Hedgehog soundtracks, it's not this game I go to. I go to Sonic 2, but that's for the future. But this is still pretty strong. It is short, though. Overall, I think we're looking at about 9-ish tracks. Not including sort of things where the music changes as you get invincibility and elements like that. We're not doing that. We're focusing on the zones and special and Robotnik.
Yeah, one thing that surprised me about this soundtrack is actually how short these tracks are for the most part, which just shows how they obviously looped a lot in the levels. You know, they don't really notice when you're playing it, but
of course,
yeah, some of these tracks are like, one of them was only like a minute and 10 seconds, stuff like that. So yeah, I guess it just like loops round and round. But obviously, yeah, Sonic is a classic game, one that I grew up playing from a very young age. So it's a very like nostalgic game for myself, and I'm sure you too, obviously. Actually came out the year I was born, so yep.
Know this game really, really well. Okay. Of course, it's Green Hill Zone. It is one of the most iconic pieces of video game music ever. The sense of wonder and adventure, the energy it conveys, the excitement exploring this new world. It makes me think back to my first experience with the game. And while it's far from my favorite track in this game overall, its impact, that's what I come back to. Its impact cannot be ignored. You know it, you can hum it, you can, sing it in your head. It's Green Hill Zone.
Yeah, I mean, anyone that's played Sonic would instantly recognize this music. For me, I think it's probably the most iconic, recognizable music in the entire Sonic franchise. It's just the music that I most associate with the character. And for me, it's possibly, in my memories, it's one of the first video game music that I remember, pieces of music that I remember hearing. I think it still holds up. It's a really fun, bouncy track that suits the level and everything that's happening in it really perfectly.
It does. It really does. That's a theme I will say across the game, is fitting the zones or levels that you're playing in, which brings me to Marble Zone. For me, a piece of music that conveys the mysterious environment that we now find ourselves in. It's really memorable. And then it's got this really cool tone change that showcases a sense of depth and upping the mysterious value of the experience. I think this is one of the more forgotten musical gems from this soundtrack.
I'd have to agree, actually, because you always think of that first level, the Green Hill Zone in Sonic, but then when it comes to Marble Zone, I think it's a bit underrated, really. But I think I think again the people behind the soundtrack did a really good job of creating music that suits the levels and obstacles that you encounter in those levels. And just hearing this music, I can picture the caves and the lava pits and those big lava waterfalls that come down upon you, and I think it really just captures that excellently.
Agreed. Spring Yard Zone. I was never too much of a fan of this one, but listening to it back now, it's quite weird sounding that I kind of enjoy it for that. It's got a switch to a peppier and brighter sound that doesn't quite fit, but I like the other bits so much that I'm kind of okay with this track overall.
Yeah, this isn't one that when I first went to listen to it again, I was like, oh, that doesn't really like jump into my memories. I was like, what level was that even from? I looked up at the like images and stuff like that and some videos and stuff like that because I want to be reminded.
Yeah.
But once I'd done all that, it did actually take me back, and actually reminds me of the Casino Nights level from Sonic 2, and the track actually has a similar sound to it. So I don't know if they remixed it in some way, because the levels themselves are a little bit similar.
Oh yeah,
But on the whole, I think it's like a very cheery track, which is really nice. It has almost a Christmassy vibe to it, I thought, because there's heavy usage of bells in it. So yeah.
interesting. Okay. Labyrinth Zone. For me, this is arguably the piece of music on the whole soundtrack that sounds exactly like the level it belongs in. It's labyrinthian in style, conveying mysterious and ancient secrets, winding around the mind, but still having a fun and offbeat melody. I find this one quite interesting, although it's more repetitive than most of the other tracks. Its loops are quite short.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And again, at the risk of repeating myself on what you're saying again, I do think it does suit the environment
Yeah.
extremely well. But I really hated this level as a kid, so maybe that's why I'm not too fond of this piece of music, because it introduces the water elements and the drowning mechanics and stuff like that. So it's not something I think of too fondly. As you said, repetitive and a little bit. It's got a little bit of a grating nature to it. I thought, like, just because of the 8-bit style,
Of course.
it can be a little bit grating in places. And I think this one not my favorite.
Far be it for me to correct you, but it's 16-bit Mega Drive Genesis.
Really, I literally Googled how many bits was Sonic, and I Googled the thing that came up was 8-bit, but I don't know.
Master System. The Master System Sonic.
That must be it. That must be it. Yeah.
Starlight Zone. This was always one of my favorite pieces of music from the original game, and I still feel that. It stands out from all the others because it's sweet and starry sounding. It's got lovely melody. And then we got this cool section that almost sounds like horns, but 16-bit style. For me, I think this is brilliant. I think this is wonderful.
That's interesting because again, I didn't remember this level that well. I think I do remember like Sonic 2 far more. I played that obviously a lot more than the original, like, but for me I had to look up some images and stuff like that. But I actually thought complete other end of the spectrum that maybe this didn't actually suit the level and environment as well. Maybe I know it's called Starlight, so because of the name being called Starlight, it does kind of suit it in that way. But funnily enough, I just thought maybe it didn't really suit what was happening in the level actually quite that well. But it's not bad.
No, fair enough. A Scrap Brain Zone, arguably the other piece of music that fits the level it is meant for perfectly. This one feels futuristic and conveys danger. You get the sense of going deep into a machine, and the background noises here really sell that. I like it, but in particular, it's the flourish that comes after the chorus that announces it's going back into its main melody that I found I enjoyed the most.
Yeah, I thought this really captured that industrial sort of mechanical feel that you have within the level, and it has a lot of upbeat undertones as well. It's a very solid track on the whole.
It is. Okay, before we get to finals on people, we got the two other odd ones in between. So I'm going to throw out Special Stage. This is where you're trying to collect the emeralds. And look, I freaking love this. It is so weird. It's so off kilter. It sounds like a fucking dream. I just love it.
You said it. I mean, I always felt like this really captured that dreamlike feeling. Yeah, just really damn well. Really like it.
Yeah, it's just really cool as fuck. And then we've got Robotnik, which is the music that plays during the boss battles with Robotnik. And this, unsurprisingly, has a boss feel tied to the robotic angles. There's not much to it. You're probably not paying much attention to it because you're in the middle of a fight with whatever Robotnik is doing at this stage, but it fits perfectly.
I think they completely nailed it with this track. Robotnik being this mad scientist, he's the evil antagonist to Sonic. It just works so well. They just nailed it.
They did. And you know what else they nailed? They nailed Final Zone. Because this is surprisingly epic. Now, when I say surprisingly epic, I must contrast that with what is really epic, which is what you'd get in Sonic 2. But for Sonic 1 and what we've had so far, this works. Making it different to the regular boss music was smart. And it does feel suitably end boss. Considering Sonic the Hedgehog, the original game's final boss, isn't that memorable, if you remember what that is, which is the thing is going up and down, this music makes up for it. I really like it.
Yeah, it really gives you that sense that there is that one last hurdle to overcome, where we've all made it to this point. You know, you've got your last life, you've got no rings, and it's at a point in gaming where there's no way to save, so it's all or nothing at this point. And I really think it captures that feeling, that struggle to overcome that last hurdle to defeat the end boss and complete the game. And it's a great track.
It is indeed. It overall is a really strong, fun, nostalgic soundtrack. You know, and although, like we've already said several times, we both seem to believe that Sonic 2 would better that, and we'll get to that further down the line. This still stands out more than, say, Sonic 3, Sonic and Knuckles, Sonic Adventure. You know, I know those, you know, stuff like that. So it shows its impact, I think.
Yeah, that's why I enjoy doing this series, because it's certain soundtracks like this one that maybe I haven't gone back to listen to for a very long time. So going back through them again, you can really appreciate it, especially considering the time period when it came out. It's 91, like you said, such an old game. Really nice, short, concise soundtrack that has just like nothing bad to it at all. Whereas soundtracks for certain other games can go a bit too long and grand, and they have like a lot of filler tracks. But this one, it hits it really on each one.
Put it this way, people, this was not our original plan for this episode. We were going to do the original Super Mario Brothers, and then I realized that is not going to work. It'll probably have to be a combination of maybe the first 3 Mario games, but like compare that to Sonic the Hedgehog, where I clearly see and go, yes, there's a dividing line, and it's long enough and it's interesting enough to talk about, you know?
Yeah.
Before we go, though, you know what happens now? Top 3 tracks from the soundtrack. You can take this first then.
Okay, well, I've gone with Green Hill Zone because, as we discussed, just iconic. It's the music I think of most when I think of Sonic. It's Green Hill Zone. So for me, that's got to go in there. I actually put in Spring Yard. I really quite like that one. Maybe a bit of a random one, but it kind of reminded me of Casino Night, which is one of my favorite Sonic 2 levels. So maybe that was why. And then I finally went with Robotnik because I just think that is a end boss music. You know, that is nailing in that sort of aspect. So that's for me.
Well, we double up on Green Hill Zone. It is simply that the iconic thing. I then chose Marble Zone, but our third one is one that you didn't really care for, and it's Starlight Zone.
Well, that's quite interesting, the divide between us there, but you know, it can't always be the same.
Of course. That is Sonic the Hedgehog, track by track. Got any thoughts on it? You know what to do? Let us know in the comments.
Thank you very much for watching. If you liked what you saw, please help us out by giving us a thumbs up and hitting that subscribe button. If you really liked what you saw, consider donating to keep the website and channel running by buying us a coffee via our coffee page or picking up some merch from our Big Cartel store. You can check us out on gbhbl.com as well as via our social media, Facebook, Instagram and Twitter, as well as listen to our interviews via SoundCloud, Apple Music and Spotify. Just search for GBHBL. Games, horror and heavy metal. What else is life for?